Good morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's symposium on local identity in the global community, creating peace in the 21st century. Today's symposium was made possible by generous support and donations of several, and I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge them. They include the State of Hawaii Office of International Relations, the Spark M. Matsunaga Institute for Peace, and the School for Hawaiian and Asian Pacific Studies at the University of Hawaii, the Hawaii Prince Hotel, the Kahala Hilton Hotel, Martel Creative Communication, United Airlines, Senator Matt Matsunaga, and Mr. Ahilia Antari, and the East-West Center. I'd also like to briefly introduce today's moderator and panelists to my left. First, the distinguished professor of Chinese history and philosophy at Harvard University and a longtime friend of the East-West Center, Dr. Gu-Wei Ming, Ms. Pualani Kanahele from the island of Hawaii, and Dr. Chandra Musaffar of Malaysia. And now, it is my great honor and privilege to introduce an internationally recognized scholar and author, the winner of the 1989 Nobel Prize for Peace, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet.
Case. Now today, the external means, that means technology, through technology, I think human ability much increased. And as a result, we also get various different ideas or ideologies from other parts of the world. Because of this, the technology or the facility which immediately brings different ideas, different systems come to our own place. And then also I think because of the economy situation and also population, we very much interrelated. So that's the reality. Then basically, the human being, because of this intelligence, right? There is when we touch some new things, then immediately it makes some kind of imprint in our mind, and then according to our own local circumstances or our own past experiences, new ideas, new desires sometimes develop. So itself, I believe, is very precious, very good. Because of that, the new initiative comes. And more new initiative, more development. But at the same time, sometimes that kind of nature, right, that kind of tendency also sometimes creates problem. After all, I think because of human intelligence or thinking power, right, even within one human being, there are a lot of contradictions or different thoughts which contradict each other. And also, again, because of human intelligence, there is a possibility or there is capacity to overcome, from these contradictions. So one way, without contradiction, no progress. At the same time, without proper mechanism to overcome these conflict or contradiction, there also is a possibility of crisis or trouble, even within one human being. If you develop some kind of different opinions within oneself, if you fail to resolve, then sometimes mental crisis. If you have the capacity to analyze these different thoughts, different ideas, and arrange adjust oneself with these different ideas, different thoughts, then that becomes inner strength. So go with that reality. I think the similar situation in family or in the community or national level or international level. And then I think that's quite a nature thing. Now I believe that now we are entering the 21st century. Due to, I think, the advanced development, I think the humanity today, I think we have, greater potential, whether we bring to bright and happy future or more disturbing future. It is in our own hand. So I think we are
we're at a turning point, a threshold.
So sometime I noticed some people have the feeling that the future of humanity is rather doomed.
Gloomy.
And some people seem they have a feeling of too much of a desperation feeling, and more pessimistic attitude. I think that's dangerous. Because if our attitude become more of a pessimistic attitude, then even if it's small things, then will increase, or even if it's small as a problem, will increase and finally become out of control. Other side, in spite of many difficulties, the serious nature or serious of the problems, if we remain with optimism and determination, of course, be more realistic. Meantime, it's realistic and more patience. Yes, we always can find some ways to overcome these problems. So, firstly, self-confidence, with as a hope, with determination, is very essential. Then second, in order to utilize human intelligence, human ability properly or constructively, the most important factor is good heart, compassionate motivation. That is almost like a guarantee for the human activities becoming constructive. So our intelligence alone, our knowledge alone, there is no guarantee whether it can be destructive or constructive. Even personal level. So we often used to find an individual who have very good education background, who have very, very intelligent brain, yet very unhappy person. And as a result, in a word, very unhappy, very unrest. So it always creates, uncomfortable within their own family or within their own community. So it took because of that intelligence without proper motivation. It becomes something the destroyer of happiness, oneself as well as others. So for such cases, that knowledge become troublemaker rather than solving trouble. So while we are caring about the brain development, equally important to take care about the basic spiritual development. When I use this spirituality, not necessarily a particular religion. No, without any religion, it can be a good person. They are spiritual. When we talk about spirituality, there can be two levels. One, including these different religious ideas, religious faith. But in any case, religious idea come later in our life. Well, in a lifetime, religion come later. But right from the beginning, from the day of birth, we already experienced and already we, I think, survived on one thing. That's human affection. So the human affection is, I think, right from the beginning, we fully experienced. And usually, I often is telling, telling my my friend, teacher or guru, although he teach us loving kindness or compassion, these things, but these comes later. Now, for example, in my own case, I think when my age reach, say, 6, 7, and later, it become more serious than around 10, 15 years. So much later. But the first experience about human affection, that's from my first day of my birth. So mother is I think the first teacher of compassion or human affection. So that is, if we think, if we analyze properly, then we can feel and we can understand the value of that affection. So the religion come later, but the basic human, the good quality, these are right from the beginning. So therefore there are two levels of spirituality. One from birth, that's more or less human nature, part of human nature. Then second, on that basis of that human nature, good quality of human nature, on that basis, religion simply, to me, seems religion simply strengthening these basic human good quality. So when I say this is spirituality is the basic human compassionate motivation or feeling. That's very crucial. So with the good brain and that kind of human, human affection or human feeling, these two things go together, then our intelligence or our ability become constructive. That's quite clear. Now I would like to touch some particular points, specific points. Now, firstly, now today there are many. I think one factor which eventually creates many problems. That is human population. It become to my mind, it become very serious when I saw the miseries in many parts of the world, and particularly in developing countries or poorer countries. One factor which is damaging, which creates problem of ecology, problem of the economy, food, and also the problem of inner fighting, communal fightings. One major factor is the human population. Now, obviously, I think this gap, Northern and Southern, this gap, not only morally wrong, but practically it is a source of problem. And that is ecological problem in these underdeveloped or developing nations. When people really fight for their survival, on that occasion, it's very difficult to tell them the preservation of forests or these things. It's obvious. Now, when the subject about the population, now the crucial thing is birth control. So, from the Buddhist viewpoint, of course, we consider each individual human life is precious. Therefore, it is naturally worthwhile or better avoid birth control. Yet, now the reality, the precious life now become too much. So not question of individual precious life, but entire precious life now facing problem. So now different circumstances. So logically, in order to save the entire precious life of human being, this is now worthwhile to think seriously about the birth control. But birth control here is a non-violent way. Sometimes I'm jokingly telling people the best thing is more monk, more nun. That's the way. So anyway, is it a non-violent method birth control is highly necessary, important. So one thing. The second thing, ecology. Now, it became very serious. So it became very important because, according to my own little experience, like war, this immediately is striking on our mind. So spontaneous, you see, response, you see, come. But then, you see, the ecology problem, without much, you see, notice, it comes gradually. When we realize things become really, you see, when you really, you see, feel it's difficult to breathe, or you see some kind of the clear symptoms comes due to the pollution, polluted water or polluted air, then might be too late. So therefore, as it is, taking care about ecology is really from that aspect, it becomes very, very serious. So each individual, as it is, should have, as it is,
Should accustom themselves.
Taking care about the ecology is something very, very crucial factor. Then perhaps I think another is a problem. I think it's due to economy and also I think mainly I think economy. You see this at a time which is some I think very bright-minded people felt if humanity is organized well, even if it's worthwhile sacrifice individual freedom, so well organized, so that can transform the whole society. So that idea, from that idea, dictatorship, authoritarian system developed. But now, it's more or less, I think that conviction also now fading away. I think disbelief. I think it is quite logical. As I mentioned before, each individual initiative is the basis of progress. Without individual initiative, difficult to transform the whole society or develop. So it's under authoritarian system. There is no opportunity to come out in each individual initiative. So as a result, that system now practically has become very clear, now difficult. So that's gone. Now another category of problem is when each individual or the community, they have the opportunity of freedom of speech, the freedom of thought, and also due to the closer relation with other peoples. So I think the realization of one's own identity, or importance of one's own identity, one's own culture, identity, or I think one's own identity, which based on culture, one's own culture, and religion, particularly I think culture. Basically, without culture, then you see that human being, I think in other words, you see, culture is one of the very important aspects of human being. So you see, culture is very important. And then the culture, individual culture, developed according to the particular areas, including climate or the food habit, all due to these factors, is a certain way of life, certain way of thinking, certain culture developed. So you see the culture, each place is because of the sort of natural evolution. So it is something very fit and that is a particular people or particular area. So it is very useful to preserve, and it is very useful to that community. So therefore, it is worthwhile, or logically, it is very important to preserve. At the same time, when we concern about one's own particular identity, culture, these things, that they also is the danger of tendency, isolate from the rest of the community. And sometimes too much emphasis on the particular thing, it also sometimes become the source of conflict with other. It seems now here also that situation becomes reality. Now, for example, in my own case, one way I always was telling people, and I firmly believe humanity, basically, just the same, just one human family. Each individual nation actually belongs to that big human family. So different culture, different race, these are secondary. And in fact today, due to economy, due to education, these factors, the now entire world are much closer. In fact, world become much smaller in certain aspect. So under such circumstances, the realization of belief or realization of oneness of human being is very, very crucial, very important. In the term of the present happiness, of the happiness of present generation, and happiness and future generation. That is the basis. On that basis, with a sense of global responsibility is the only item, the only key factor for better future. If we think only my nation, and if we create artificial as a boundary, artificial boundaries or artificial gap, or I don't know, this is a sort of barrier, the artificial barrier, my nation, that nation, and think only yourself, and forget about the other. The reality, you will suffer because your economy, your very existence much depend on other. Therefore, there is no point to neglect about others' interest. So the reality, my interest is others' interest. Others' interest is my interest. That's the reality. So you see, the other nation, even including your own enemy, the more prosperity, more economic development is ultimately bringing benefit to you. So that's the reality. So under such circumstances, and then I think the global issues such as ecology, no matter what powerful, so one or two nations cannot solve this problem unless the worldwide people, worldwide nation, make effort. So therefore, the reality, many problems is actually the global nature. Therefore, time is gone. As you think in the term of my nation, of my continent, I think that view, that attitude is now old-fashioned. In ancient times, yes, because of your existence, exist independently. No need, others or cooperation. So therefore, at that time, it is the right term, my nation, different my nation. So these castles or these fortresses, these developed. Now today, the age of missile. Then, castles, these are really become now target. It's much better to remain underneath. So that's the situation. So similarly, you see, the situation, the reality must change, so the method also must change. So that today, I think the idea of think humanity as the one, that's very crucial. So I believe it. And of course, as a Buddhist monk, in my every prayer, a daily prayer, they use the word of entire sentient being. So when I feel, when I think, you see, if this is something truly I believe, then I must implement. It is not sufficient when I am sitting cross-legged on a cushion and say all sentient beings. And when my practice think only Tibetan, that's wrong. That's hypocrisy. So therefore, this is from that perspective, yes. Now they're thinking one's own family, one's own nation, that is now gone. So it is realistically, it is time now, think others' interest as my own interest. So that's the time. Meantime, because of, you see, the present situation, I also, you see, stress the importance of preservation of Tibetan culture, Tibetan identity. So here's some conflict. So you see, I myself, you see, try to find the answer for that. Then the answer is look, our own hand, each finger. Oh, there is special identity. And according to identity, and also, you see, each individual finger has, you see, this special ability. I think this is more stronger. You see, even if these four fingers together, this you see, have to face. So you see, each have, you see, some kind of special roles. But meantime, you see, there's no conflict. Each, you see, carry, you see, its own responsibility and work together. So it becomes much useful. I think all, you see, this similar finger, I think the thumb. If it's a 5 thumb, I don't know. maybe you should better use this individual. Oh, this is very difficult. Much easier. So you see, each one is special for quality, and more beautiful and more useful. So similarly, I think human beings, you see, each individual identity, each individual cultural heritage, very useful. Meantime, work together. On the now human being, human case, human is motivation. These, you see, no motivation. Human being has motivation. So therefore, that is the problem. Motivated, think in the term of we, they. Now that creates problem. Reality is they all depend on one another, but mentally still, you see, make that barrier, artificial barrier. So once mentally we realize, see, the things are very much interdependent nature. Then the different ideology, different identity, and keeping these alive. Meantime, you see, clearly realize the sameness or the interdependent nature, entire people, entire country or nation or the humanity. So then we can overcome. We can find, I think, some kind of ways to keep individual identity. Meantime, the cooperate or coordination, this spirit of work together or mutual respect. Realize mutual respect, not sort of compulsory, but mutual respect on the basis of realization. My interest, their interest is mixed. So I think it must depend on education. I found in Europe, that when I asked some younger people, what is their feeling towards next country, neighbor, they often, I got the answer, there's not much differences. They go, buy a car, some cases, even it's a daily basis. But it's a different language, it's a different borders postway. But in mentally, because of their daily experiences, more or less it's the same. Same country or city, the feeling of just one. And also, I think recently, after the two Germans reunification, now I was told, between Poland and unified Germany, now there's no requirement of visas or these things. People simply can cross the border without difficulties, like one phone is a country. So these areas, because of I think less tension, and then the tourist and also the economy reasons. Now the feeling of border, feeling of importance of border, has now become less and less. So some area, in spite of the difficulties, the border it becomes something very sacred. So I think through education, through proper presentation about the reality, I think we can increase the realization of oneness and realization of interdependent nature. And also, I think much depend on the religious leaders and also the politicians, no doubt. So, and then regarding the religions, sometimes although the religions, various different religious traditions, they provide us a good heart, right? Or concept of love, compassion, forgiveness. So suppose the different religious tradition, they provide us as the spirit of harmony or unity. But sometimes the religion also become another factor to create more division. That's very unfortunate. But now here also, if we constant meeting or exchange, according to my own little experience, one effective method is constant meeting between scholars from different religious traditions and discuss about what is the differences, what similarities on academic level. Then another thing, the genuine practitioner of different religious traditions come together, exchange their deeper spiritual experiences. It's a different concept, different philosophy, but more or less the same experiences. I found many cases, same experiences, experience of genuine love, compassion, and spirit of forgiveness. So the exchange between genuine practitioners, it extremely helpful to develop mutual understanding. On these basis, occasionally leaders of different religions come together. Like one time they assist in meeting like that. It's very beneficial. And then actually I think it is becoming the spirit of pluralism among the religious traditions. Now, it is coming. I think it is very, very positive as a sign. In ancient time, the people of different religious followers remain more or less isolated. So at that time, there's certain idea. My religion is best. That idea is useful and working. But now today, all almost in daily, we have contact with a lot of other religious tradition. Under such circumstances, now that kind of attitude now is not fit. So the idea of pluralism is something very crucial matter. So that spirit now actually coming in various different religious groups. So if we make further effort, there is possibility. Variety of religions, and at the same time to work together without conflict. So that's very possible. So so these are these are the points which I believe connected with future of humanity. So that's all. Thank you. Now.
Thank you very much for your enlightening thoughts. The next speaker is our own Olani Kamaheli, a Hawaiian, a kumohula, an instructor of Hawaiian language and culture, an activist in maintaining the integrity of Hawaiian spirituality. And for many of us who have the privilege of knowing her as a teacher and friend, a standard of inspiration for seekers of profound self-knowledge and holistic flourishing of the body and mind. Please share with us, Fulani, your thoughts on the peaceful surrender.
To His Holiness, the Dalai Lama of Tibet, aloha, leina mai, from our ancestors, na kupuna o ke aina, na poe o ke aina, the people that live on this land at this time, na au makua, na kua o makou, our guardians, our spiritual guardians who are with us at this time. We welcome you to these islands. ask them to be with you as you take your trip around our island, guide you safely. To Chandra Masfar, aloha yaoi, we welcome you to our islands. Na kupuna o mako poe o Hawaii, na hua na au makua, aloha yaoi. To Due Ming, an old friend, welcome you back to our islands. Nice, always nice to see you and to hear your smart words. Smart guy. And I'd like to say to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, that despite the fact that I have lived in this English-speaking country for 40 years plus, I still have a problem with the language. And so sometimes I may speak in my broken English and feel comfortable with it. I'd like to look at this title of Local Identity in the Global Community, Creating Peace in the 21st Century. That in itself is a talk, just that by itself. The thought that I would like to, first of all, look at the idea of local identity, because that is what I am most familiar with. And I'd like to be able to look at who we are as Hawaiians and maybe the examples of who we are and what we've come to be, maybe examples for the global community. Whether to follow or whether to stay away from, we are nevertheless at the examples. I'd like to be able to say a little bit about, tell you a little bit about our history, and because most of us are from these islands, we've heard our history over and over and over again. Nevertheless, this history is from my eyes, from the eyes of my ancestors, from our point of view. Our Polynesian ancestors sailed to Hawaii from southern Polynesia almost 2,000 years ago. They came on small canoes. They didn't have room for luxury items. They were very, very simple people, and they brought with them tools of survival. And so I'm going to maintain the topic of survival and picking up again from His Holiness speech, his comments on survival, because it's important for who we are in our survival thus far in our islands. Their tools of survival were the food and medicinal plants that they brought with them. Their tools of survival was their belief system that they were very strong in. Their tools of survival was the traditional family practices which they brought along with them. Also the code of ethics as to how they would treat each other, code of ethics as to how they would treat their environment. They brought with them their intelligence, something that was greatly admired. And last but certainly not least, they brought with them their hands, their hard-working hands. When they arrived in these islands, they were greeted by what I call Nakupa o Ka'aina. Nakupa o Ka'aina, I guess I can translate as being the natives of this island. Nakupa o Ka'aina was the sun, the moon, the stars, the winds, the ocean, the coral beds, the land, the mountains, the trees, the volcano, the birds, the insects. Nakupa o Ka'aina didn't only greet them and forget about them. Nakupa o Ka'aina also helped feed them, also gave them warmth when they were cold. Nakupa o Ka'aina also extended their land. Nakupa o Ka'aina also clothed them, regulated their fishing and their planting systems or cycles. Nakupa o Ka'aina did not ask for anything back. This was something they had. This was something to be given. Our ancestors became so familiar with Nakupa o Ka'aina that they knew them by names. The wind that we have on the Big Island in Hilo, where I am from, the very calming wind, the very comfortable wind is the Malanai. They knew the Malanai when it blew, by its feel, by its touch. The rain that we very often hear, because we live in the forest area, that rattles the leaves as it is coming, and we know that it's coming, is Kanilehua. Aya no Kanilehua, eya mai oya. There is a Kanilehua, it's coming, it's time to pick our clothes. We knew the Kanilehua. The rain that hits upon us in the saddle of our mountains is Kipupu, wakes us up, makes us alert as to where we are and whose territory we are in, the fact that we must pay attention to it. These were Nakupauka Aina. Our kupunas were very familiar with them, and it was very important for them to know these by name because they provided for them their resources. Their resources were things that helped them build their homes, as well as things that fed them. They were the sources of pure energy. Pure energy was important because they became the life force for our kupuna. They became their gods. They helped them survive in these islands. Population increased as time went by. And with the increase of the population, also came the stratification of this population. So now there was a division. You had the elite of the society, you had the learned men, the kahunas, you had the koas, you had the maka'inana. Along with these came the hierarchy of the gods. Very perplexed, very complex hierarchy of the gods. The more people we had, the more the division of the gods were necessary. So you had deities servicing the ali'i, deities servicing the maka'inana, deities that were serving the people that had their own traditional practices. We were very comfortable with our many deities. And they were all very necessary to us in order for us to survive out here in this land. From 400 AD, give or take a few years, where the coming of the first canoes to these islands, to about 1800 AD, towards the end of the 1700s, our population rose from the few that came off of that first few canoes to about 800,000 people. To me, this is a success in survival. That they are out here on these islands, being able to survive despite the wars, despite some of the diseases. They were able to survive from a few canoes to 800,000 people. I think that we may learn a lesson for us that are surviving today. When we look at this particular time period of 1800, what are the elements of success for survival? What did they do? How did they think? How did they believe? How did they exist that allowed them to survive and to multiply and to thrive in these islands? As I look back into this particular focal point of the 1800s, one of the things I see are the same things that they believed in when they came to Hawaii. When those first canoes came to Hawaii, they had their tools of survival. And one of the tools of survival, as I said before, was a very strong belief system. They still had that strong belief system at that time. They still admired intelligence and hard work. Those were admirable qualities. You see them in our literature, you see them in our history, the way they admire these two qualities. These people were all from the same general area that came and occupied these islands. They all had the same genealogical line. They all understood each other's beliefs and practices. They lived in the same environment. They understood Nakupa o Ka'aina, and they appreciated the giving that they received when they first came here. If we look further into how they survived in these islands at that particular time, besides having these fine points or these tools of survival, we will look at the individual and how they treated the individual at this time. If an individual had a task and he completed his task and still was able to maintain the code of ethics in completing his task, he was considered a pono, or a righteous person, therefore a very worthwhile citizen. But it does not, the survival of the race does not depend on an individual. The survival of the race, if a family is going to survive, excuse me, the survival of the family depends on that family, the whole family, not the individual that is the patriarch of the family. But the whole family has to be pono. The whole family they all have to, as individuals, understand themselves, complete their task, maintain the ethics of the ethics of treating each other, and the moral standards for which they were raised. Then that family will survive. But this does not only count for the individual or the family, this also counts for the whole village. If the village wants to survive, they have to do exactly the same thing as the individual. They must know each other well, they must have the same belief system, they must be very strong, very pono in who they are. The village will survive. And then it goes up to the race. If the race must survive, then they must also have the same code of ethics, the same genealogical line, the same respect for each other. At this point of time, it was also very important for us to procreate, for us to continue our genealogical lines. And so it was up to each generation to carry on this responsibility of continuing our genealogical lines. Continue our genealogical lines doesn't mean that we're having only one or two children. Continuing our genealogical lines meant that we had lots of children. There was nothing else to do, like have children. Also, there were good hands to work on the farm and go fishing, etc., maintaining the family. But the point of continuing your genealogical line, your lineage, was important. And so this was emphasized. If we look at the 1800s, and I don't know where I am in my paper. I really don't care that much about it. Some of the things is that, if we look at the 1800s, right at the turn of the century, from between the 1800s and the 1900s, that particular century can, to me, be summarized in 4 sentences. Before I go to those 4 sentences, and I don't treat it lightly. These were very important times for us because it was the introduction of other people with other cultures, people from other cultures, people with other genealogical background, people with different belief systems, people that were very strong about who they were. Before we go into that particular time period, let me just back up a little bit and talk about I talked about the code of ethics, talk about some of these code of ethics and the practices within the code of ethics, which was practiced at that time and still are being looked at today and talked about today, and for some of us are being practiced today. Something simple like aloha. Many of us use the word aloha. Our legislature just passed a bill, or I think it's passed, I don't know, that we would teach aloha to those people in government, teach aloha to other people. Aloha for us was second nature. Aloha we learned from Nakupau Ka'aina. We learned from the land what aloha was all about. We learned from the wind, we learned from the sun, from the moon what aloha was all about. Because the word alo means to be face to face. The word ha means that I am giving you part of my essence, part of what is inside of me, my breath. And when we come together, my ha is your ha. I will help you, and I will give to you without asking to get anything back from you. I don't expect it. This is the true sense of aloha. It's very difficult for me to teach somebody about aloha, and then at the end of the lecture, ask them for money. There is a conflict of what aloha is all about. But at this time, the 1800, at the beginning of the 1800, aloha was second nature to our people. Hospitality was part of that aloha spirit. You don't ask people to come into your house and feed them and expect to go to their house the next day and be fed. You were expected to have people come into your house, and you were expected to feed them, and you did feed them. Even if you had only salt or a little bit of poi or whatever, you fed them whatever you had. And that was part of your essence that went with them. The concept of aloha triggered an even higher practice. If there is aloha between myself and my neighbor learns this concept of aloha, he will also go out and help and give without asking. And this help and giving will catch on. Just as our first kupuna came over here and were given the help by Nakupau Ka'aina, the ocean and the sun and the winds. They learned that they must do this as well. And so other people who came to the islands, they were given this. Eventually, this aloha came back to them, and people helped them, and people gave to them without asking. What happens when this comes back to you is another practice that we call lokahi. It's a higher form of aloha because it has gone a cycle. You have not only been the teacher of what aloha is, but now you are a recipient of aloha. What you do, and it is as important to receive as it is to give. Because what you do when you receive is you elevate the pono, or the righteousness of the giver. And so it is the reciprocation of the giving. And eventually it does come back to you. This concept or this practice of lokahi was a very important practice to us. The other practice that we talk about a lot today is the practice of aloha aina. And aloha aina is basically aloha aina means love the land. And my question is then, why should we love the land? We should love the land because it is the major nutritional source for our physical longevity. As simple as that. We are not better than the land, we are part of the land. And we share with it, it shares back with us. We must love the land because it is the foundation of our human existence. We don't come from the ocean, we're not ocean people. We don't live in the air, we live on the land. Therefore, we must love the land. We love the land because it is where the bones of our ancestors are, and eventually our bones will be there. The very essence of our ancestors are the things that we walk on. We receive from them, we take care of them. The land then, literally and metaphorically, is our mother. The land is our father. It is our ancestor. It is not something that is just coming out of my mouth. It's something that I feel in my na'au. When we talk aloha aina, that's the extent to which aloha aina should go. At the turn of the century in the 1900, 1893, the United States decided to illegally overthrow our government, our way of life. And so they did. The four sentences that I was going to tell you to describe this particular time period, this century, between 1800 and 1900. One, and I call it, this particular time, I call it they came. One, they brought with them their religion, and they settled among us. Two, they brought with them their economic system as well as their education system. Three, they brought with them their guns and to establish their government. And number four, from 800,000 of us natives and 1800, the turn of the century, 1900, there were 40,000 of us. That in itself is a summary of the 100 years. And if we, physically we were not persecuted, but psychologically and spiritually, we were devastated, destroyed. We were, and if I look at those same tools of survival, which our people had when they came on the first canoe, that they had during the 1800s. If I look at the same tools of survival, what I see at this time is the fact that our belief system was so different that we didn't understand it, and so we trailed behind. We were no longer considered intelligent. There was a new economic system that we were not used to, that we have to adapt to. Therefore, we were considered lazy. We did not have the time to fish and to care for our family and to work the land because we have to get into this other system. And so we were considered lazy. We were unsure as to our code of ethics at this time. What philosophy do we follow? Do we follow the philosophy of our ancestors, or do we follow the philosophy of the new government, of the new people? The land use changed, our attitude toward the land changed. Our cultural practices and our language were suppressed. The political system was changed, just to name a few things. Today we're citizens of the United States, 1993, 1994. We are citizens of the United States. We are Americans. We have adapted. Within this 100, 200 years, we have adapted. We are Americans. We have been educated in the American system. Some of us have received our BA, some of us MA, some of us PhDs. We are Americans. We have become very smart the American way. Some of us are with the legislative system. We have become very smart in the political way. Many of us, 99% of us who are Hawaiians or part Hawaiians, are Christians. We have become religiously smart. So now that we are Americans, do we forget the past? How do we survive from the 1900s till now? If we look at the 2,000 years prior to this time and the survival instinct of our ancestors, our queen was correct in peacefully surrendering. In order for the 40,000 of us to survive, we had to surrender. And the peaceful surrender was a necessary point, again, for our survival. But again, we bring it back to today. Because we are American citizens and very smart in this particular way of life, we also have a peaceful revolt. We can lobby our legislatures and our congressmen to turn around some of the laws that has been established so that it becomes our benefit. And so in our revolting, we have been able to gain some of the status that we have lost over the last 200 years. We have not forgotten our ancestors. We have not forgotten the way in which they came to these islands and their need to survive. So this need, this survival instinct is still with us. There are many questions during this particular period of time that we look at. We are, as Hawaiians, are again looking for the possibility of renewed sovereign entity. We may remain, there is a question of remaining with the United States or become totally autonomous. In any case, whatever we plan to do, whatever is decided, we still have to maintain our friendliness with the United States. We have lost a lot in our peaceful surrender. We have to think about how much more do we want to lose. The other question is, what do we want to retain when we look over the values, the code of ethics that was brought down to us? How do we move into our future? How do we utilize global peace to maintain our identity today? Is global peace a reality? Is there an example in the global community which offers the right prescription for peace, for survival of race, of language, of spiritual beliefs without persecution? I think Hawaii is an excellent example of that. A few years ago, we were looked at by our cousins from the South Pacific as the example of what not to be. Because they looked at us as losing everything. Let's not be like the Hawaiians. They lost their land, they lost their culture, they lost their language. So let's hold on to our land, let's hold on to our government, was their sentiment. Today, I think we have turned that around so that they can look to us and say, we can do as our ancestors did. We can maintain our culture without persecution. First of all, we have to know who we are. There has to be an identity by each individual one of us who want to regain that Hawaiianness about us. Like I've cut through a lot of the negativism of these last 2,000 years, we need to do that, to look for that pearl within us. Within each one of us, there is a pearl that connects us, a very valuable part of us that connects us to our ancestors. We have that, and we can use it. We're still part of our ancestors, and our ancestors are still part of us. If we want to, with that knowledge, if we want to move ahead, we can look into that part of us that will allow us to continue. And if we do this, then local identity is completed. We would have set a groundwork, an example for others of our cousins to follow in the South Pacific. We look to the Indians and some of the Indian tribes in their success in moving away, becoming autonomous, becoming a sovereignty entity, as a thing that we would like to follow. But we are not Indians, we're Hawaiians. Their examples are good, but they must move along on their own, in their own tribal ways. We can look at their examples, we must move along in our own Hawaiian way with our ancestors. Although we are citizens again of the United States of America, America is not our father, it is not our mother, it is not our ancestor. Hawaii is our father, our mother, and our ancestor. I know who I am, and I know what I must do in order that my family and their ancestral connection continue. The need to continue the family bloodline can be worked from where I stand in our family. We understand that. We understand that we need to continue the language. We understand that we need to continue the spiritual connection of life. That we again need to mahalo na kupuoka aina and allow them to survive within us so that we can become one with them again, and in doing this, survive upon this land. We have been fortunate to inherit a family tradition, and through this family tradition being able to connect to our ancestors, and through this family tradition be able to move our family ahead, being proud of the fact that we're Hawaiians. The examples of lifestyle which we lead in our family, we're well aware, and we practice what we have. We practice these codes of ethics. And when I say I don't mean I by myself. I mean there are others out there who feel the same way as I do, who have treated their families the same way, whose family move along with them in identifying their local identity. But our pond is small and our ripple is contained. And our ripples affect only a few people. The more there are of us, the more it will affect. So getting out into the greater world, having a worldview of the treatment of people to each other, the code of ethics. Because I look very strongly upon my identity to my Hawaiian side, I think all of us who are in this room and wherever must also look upon their identity and who they are, and be pa'a in who they are, and be secure in who they are. If each of us know who we are and where we're coming from, then we would have more respect for one another. Then we would not have this dominance or try to dominate because of our insecurity about what we must do, and the fact that we must put down these people that we don't understand. But if you can show me that you are pa'a in who you are, I will show you that I am pa'a in who I am, and we will live as brothers.
understand some of you have submitted questions before. If not, I think we will just recognize you, and please speak loudly. I'll try to repeat your question to Pualani. And of course, other members of the panel as well. Don't be shy, it's a fascinating experience. Yes, please, in the back first. The question is addressed to both His Holiness and the Pua. The strategy, I hope the word is used in the spiritual sense as well as the political sense, of personal identity, Hawaiian Tibetan, and the broader global demands. And first ask Pua, what is your response?
I don't know if I have a strategy. I haven't sat to think about this, how I'm going to pull everybody together. I don't really want to. I think the only, as I ended my talk, I talked about my association with my family. I think that basically that's what I have to stick to, the fact that we are strong as to who we are. And to me, examples are a more acceptable, certainly stronger to follow than what is coming out of my mouth. I think we have to be examples of who we are and what we believe in. And showing that we are these examples of who we are and what we believe in will be easier to follow. People don't have to second guess that what we're saying and what we're doing are really the same thing, or are they different? So I think more so than have a strategy of teaching people and talking is to show that I am who I am.
I have a question for His Holiness. As winner of the
Please,
Nobel...
Please, I think it's important for us to keep some order here. And would you address your question first, then I'll come to you. This is second. Sorry.
First of all, I miss Ahilia Antari, not Mr. I wanted to get that clear.
Thank you.
Okay. My question is, why look at things so separately, like family or Hawaiian culture, American culture that came? Couldn't we look more as we're all humanity living on one planet with a common goal, not of just surviving, but of living peaceful, prosperously, joyfully, and happily together as a whole, as one. And with every human being thinking that thought, creating and manifesting that existence instead of manifesting and creating surviving. Comments, please.
Challenging question. Forget about local identities. Be universal. So I think it's a wrong way of putting it, but the sentiment is there. Please.
My whole talk was focusing on being Hawaiian because that's who I am. That doesn't mean that all of us will be Hawaiian. That means this is the example that I'm putting forth because this is the example that I best know. If I can live peacefully within my environment and among my own people, I can certainly live peacefully with other people. You need to look at finer points of what is being said and not so much these separatist thing of what is being said. My whole thing about local identity is, first of all, I have to know who I am. You have to know about who you are. He has to know who he is. And in knowing who we are and in being comfortable with who we are, then we can live as brothers and as friends and certainly as sisters. But we have to know that first. Then there will be more peace in the global community when I know that somebody else is not trying to dominate me, but is Pa'a in who he is, and I'm Pa'a in who I am.
With apology, the gentleman over there I interrupted.
Yes, thank you very much. His Holiness, as the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, you are surely aware of the dilemma that many of our world leaders are having today in terms of peacekeeping and intervention. Aside from what individuals can do, families, societies, etc., do you have any comment to make upon what our world leaders should be doing to try to maintain the stability and peace of which we've discussed?
The question is, what advice that His Holiness will offer to the world leaders concerning global peace?
Oh, difficult question. Difficult question. Sometimes I feel, of course, leaderships. I think that in spite of their individual feelings or views or sentiments, they have to act according to the circumstances. So sometimes I think now like many politicians, before they took the responsibility, they promised many things, but I think sometimes they a little bit, wrong motivation or wrong deceptive motivation. That's I think. But sometimes I think they are very sincere. But then when they took the real responsibility, then they have to face the reality. So it becomes difficulties. So in any way, I feel our whole sort of, I think the atmosphere, or in the international atmosphere, I think, of course, this, happen today's atmosphere, sometimes I feel unhealthy. This happened because of, I think, many factors in the past. So this cannot change overnight, and also by individual leaders. I feel whole society has the responsibility. And after all, the individual leaders come from that society. So first, I think we have to think, and also they have to take care about our society as a whole. Here, of course, the government and some other individual people certainly they have some great influence. Yet, I think each of us have the potential to create better society. Now here I'm saying this particular field, better society means not necessarily economy alone, but more honest. More peace. I think honest, more sincere, as a compassionate attitude develop. Less crime, more truthful, will be more honest. So usually, unrest or the opposite force of peace usually come where people not much thinking about morale, not much thinking about ethical values, but rather power, money, things like that. Then, you see, these people, you see, no hesitation to utilize any sort of method. So that's why, you see, more, how say, unhappy things happen. Here, you see, one topic usually is I raise, that is the idea of demilitarization. Which when I spoke there, I forgot. So now this one is the opportunity now. Now I would like to add, is that the idea of demilitarization, that is, I think, very essential. This is so long human being is there is some part of our negative emotion always there. For that, usually I call sort of inner disarmament. Try to reduce hatred. I think the unlimited greed, these things is one way, and try to increase the genuine sense of brotherhood, sisterhood. See, that's the way of inner disarmament. Meantime, we must make every effort to external disarmament. Now, look, the United States. Now you see, many people, including the government, you see, have compelled to look very seriously about the gun laws. So you see, the gun is available, the weapon is available. There's some disasters. So always this happen. Actually, what is the purpose of gun? Not making noise, but something else. So if gun never used, not fulfilled. So you see, they basically, you see, the gun, I think, should be, the weapon should be reduced and eventually eliminated. So already, I think there are some positive signs. I think now, today, as a result of the two blocks are gone, in spite many unpleasant events there, I think at least the threat of nuclear holocaust now much reduced, and people already talking, eventually, even planning the reduce of nuclear weapon. These are, I think, very, very positive. Now, still, we must make every effort to lead, to go this line. Eventually, one is my dream is the individual nation should be completely demilitarized, and then we may need some kind of force, some troublemaker of people. So always happen. So in order to face this reality, we may have some kind of, we may have to keep some forces, but that force can create on the basis of regional basis, or eventually, like international basis, controlled by United Nations. Now already the United Nations now involved some forces under the UN control already now happening. So this should expand. So therefore, the nation to nation, then much less threat without weapon, and also another method about the demilitarization is unified forces of different countries. Like although I think as a first step, the initial stage, like Franco-German unified forces. On a regional basis, individual nation keep forces, but commander somehow unified, so that within that group, and become impossible to fight, to utilize, to mobilize the army. So that eventually can expand. So in any way, I think you see, it is our individual responsibility to think about these things. And again, sometimes I feel the concept of war, concept of military establishment, I feel sometimes many people, many nations, somehow I feel brainwashed. So think about this, and also part of our nature. Still, I do feel when I saw the weapons, oh, very smart, very beautiful, isn't it? Very attractive. Even it's a small toy weapon, like you say, air rifle, very beautiful, isn't it? I think, and the worst thing is our concept is war, defense, in the name of defense, is something sacred. Actually, it's based on the very important feeling of border. We and they. On that concept, on the basis of that concept, military forces, military establishment was developed. So long the powerful military establishment is there, then if something slightly wrong, there is the potential of the bloodshed. So the very concept of this war, hero, I think is dangerous. So important to right from the beginning, to change that attitude. Military establishment no longer relevant. And also now, practically, now I think the idea of ahimsa, idea of non-violence, now it's spreading. Look, Israel and Palestine, through decades. In fact, in some cases, I feel that both sides deliberately promote hatred and bloodshed. Adopted that method, most effective method. But eventually, as the circumstances become such, even these parties now come to term agreement in the spirit of reconciliation, in the spirit of non-violence. I think these are very positive. So the international situation is such. Now, non-violent method is more appropriate, more realistic than using weapon. So I think this is, a good opportunity, right? A good time, or good time. So I think each individual must make every effort. Now, most important, as I mentioned there, they cultivate here good human spirit. This is most important. I think the layman, the parent, have more responsibility than monk and nun. You see, first, your own family, within your own home, must cultivate, must create an atmosphere of love and compassion. So you see, each individual family, once you develop that kind of nature, that kind of atmosphere, then the new generation, the young children, the new generation. Now these, because they are right from the beginning, they develop, they survive, they grown within that kind of atmosphere. That's, I think, one of the most important way to develop or to build better world.
That's the signal for us to move on.
Dr. Chandra Musafa is a Malaysian, a messenger of peace, and advocate for human rights, a prolific writer, and a leader of the international Muslim community dedicated to promoting global consciousness and global action for the creation of a just world guided by a spiritual and moral vision of life and living. His topic is global dominance, cultural identity, and Islam. He will deliver his thoughts from his seat there. Let's welcome.
His Holiness Dalai Lama, revered leader of the people of Tibet, Professor Tu Weiming, Ms. Polani Kanahili, brothers and sisters, peace be with you. The theme of our symposium focuses upon the global community. But is there a global community? If by community we mean an association of people with certain shared values, shared rights, shared responsibilities, and a certain shared sense of destiny, then a global community does not exist. What does exist is a global system, an unjust, unequal global system which allows a few who are strong to dominate the many who are weak. The injustice of domination is reflected in every sphere of global life. In global politics, it is the superpower of the day and its allies, through the United Nations and other such institutions, who determine the fate of millions of children, women, and men in Bosnia, Palestine, in Iraq, Libya, in East Timor, and Tibet, motivated very often by their own selfish interests. In the global economy, a mere 23% of the world's population controls 85% of the world's wealth. It is because of this control that the recent General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, ensured that most of the benefits of global trade would go to the North. The North will gain by as much as $270 billion, while impoverished Africa will lose $2.6 billion every year as a result of this new trade agreement. Indeed, it is because of an unjust global system that 1.4 billion human beings, a quarter of the entire human family, remain mired in absolute poverty. It is because of an unjust global system that poor nations are burdened with huge debts to the tune of something like $1.6 trillion. Debts which kill, brothers and sisters, debts which kill 650,000 infants across 3 continents every year: Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It is this unjust global system which allows 4 news agencies located in the West to control 90% of all international news and information. It is this system which allows a minority in the West to disseminate ideas and images, values and visions from its own culture as the defining themes of a global culture. This Western-dominated global culture, whatever its many noble attributes, has generated a certain notion of life and of living which is detrimental to the vast majority of humanity. It is the idea that life revolves around wealth, power, and pleasure. It is this image of living, transmitted through the media and propelled by the powerful global economic forces at work, which threatens local identities and local cultures. This distorted, perverted view of life is creating a global culture which contains the 7 most deadly sins which Mahatma Gandhi warned humanity about many decades ago. What are these deadly sins that the great Mahatma warned us about? Number 1, politics without principle. Number 2, wealth without work. Number 3, pleasure without conscience. Number 4, knowledge without character. Number 5, commerce without morality. Number 6, science without humanity. And number 7, worship without sacrifice. If we reflected upon each and every one of these deadly sins, we would be convinced that culture today, our way of life, is very closely connected with those sins. Politics has no principle. People earn wealth without work, through the stock market, for instance, through the manipulation of financial capital. One seeks pleasure without conscience, because pleasure has become an end in itself. One worships, it's true, but there is no notion of sacrifice that must accompany prayer. Each and every one of these sins transgresses the most cherished values and principles in each and every one of our spiritual and moral traditions. In Islam, as in Christianity, as in Judaism, as in many other religions, the purpose of life is not the pursuit of power, or the pursuit of wealth, or the pursuit of pleasure as ends in themselves. The purpose of life is very, very clear. It's unambiguous. It is to serve God. Serving God in Islam, as in many other religions, means in reality absorbing and assimilating all those universal, eternal values and principles which are so fundamental for human existence. That's what serving God means. It means transforming the self, transforming society on the basis of those values. It means becoming committed, totally committed to justice, to love, to compassion, to equality, to humility, to moderation, to freedom. This is what it means in the real sense of it. It is interesting that His Holiness the Dalai Lama spoke about compassion. Compassion is also a very important value, a vital principle in Islam. In fact, compassion is one of the 2 most praiseworthy attributes associated with the name of God in Islam. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. Now, it is so important in Islam, the notion of compassion, that every verse in the Quran contains the concept of compassion and of mercy. It is so important, dear brothers and sisters, that millions and millions of Muslims, 1.2 billion of them, when they perform their daily prayers 5 times a day, it is this phrase that they utter over and over again. In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. Compassion is a vital element in the notion of character and culture as far as Islamic civilization is concerned. If there's any other value that is as important as compassion, it is justice. Justice very often is linked with compassion in Islam. You have to be just. The Quran tells us over and over again. It is justice that defines your piety. It is justice, the Quran tells us, which was the message and the mission of every prophet that came to earth right from the beginning of time. And every one of them is acknowledged, revered, and respected in Islam. Every one of those prophets. And the message was justice. It is justice which will determine how you will be judged the day of judgment. Justice is vital. It is compassion and justice which determine Muslim culture and Muslim civilization. So when one talks of the identity of a Muslim, this is the bedrock of that identity. This is its anchor sheet, the notion of compassion and justice. It is true, dear brothers and sisters, that on a number of occasions Muslims themselves have not lived up to the ideals of compassion and justice. But nonetheless, these ideals are vital in Islamic philosophy. Now, how does such a philosophy of life, a culture, an identity that revolves around compassion and justice, rooted in God consciousness, how does that dovetail with the sort of culture that we have today? A culture that revolves around power, wealth, and pleasure. The contradiction is obvious. And for a lot of Muslims, the contradiction is also very painful. It is painful because that culture which worships wealth, power, and pleasure seeks to dominate large segments of the Muslim world for reasons that are connected with economics and power. It so happens, as many of you know, dear brothers and sisters, that the lifeline of Western industrial civilization, what keeps Western industrial civilization alive, that lifeblood flows beneath the feet of Muslim peoples. Oil. Because of oil. Because of the oil that is found in Muslim lands. You find that we have a global system where a minority in the north have, for the most part of this century, tried to control and dominate those who produce and sell oil. This, it seems to me, is at the root of the conflict between these two cultures and civilizations. It is control and domination, the desire to control that oil for the benefit of Western civilization. And this has been compounded by a number of other factors in history. It's been compounded by conflicts like Palestine, Bosnia, Somalia, and so on. But it's also been compounded by centuries of prejudice, of ignorance, of antagonism between these two civilizations. So deep is the prejudice, so great is the antagonism, that in the interface of no other two civilizations do you have so much misunderstanding as between Islam and Western civilization. It is in the midst of this that Muslim societies are trying to reassert their identity. It's in the midst of this that they're trying to rediscover their own destinies. It is in the midst of this that they're trying to regain control over their own resources, that they want to exert authority and sovereignty over their own lands. Surely, this is a legitimate struggle. Every people have a right to exercise authority over their own resources, to determine their own destiny, to decide their own fate as a people. What is sad is sometimes the very powerful do not want to concede that right. They do not want to concede the legitimacy of the struggle, to exercise control over one's own destiny, over one's own resources, land and people. I'd like to submit to you, dear brothers and sisters, that those of us who believe in human dignity and social justice must be prepared to acknowledge the legitimacy of the struggle of people who want to assert authority over their own destiny. Having said that, let me also add very quickly that in the course of struggling to assert their own destiny, to determine their own fate, there are certain groups within the Muslim world who in a sense have betrayed the values and principles of Islam. They have become dogmatic, They have become exclusive in their orientation. Some of them have become sectarian in outlook. Some of them pursue very extreme methods in order to achieve legitimate goals. This is wrong. It is wrong, and it has no support within Islamic philosophy. Muslims everywhere must realize that what they are fighting is not something that is exclusive to them. They are fighting domination and control, which is a global phenomenon, and they're not the only victims. There are many other victims of domination, of control. They're not the only ones who have been denied the right to exercise control over their own destiny. Others have also been denied this right. They must see their struggle as a struggle which involves many other human beings, all victims of domination and control. They are all oppressed. The concept of the oppressed in the Quran, for instance, is not confined to any particular people or particular religion. It's anyone who has become a victim of injustice. And the oppressed must understand this, that the struggle is against domination and control, which revolves around power, wealth, and pleasure. It is this system which denies our humanity, which denies our inner spirituality. And that is the system that we have to struggle against, all of us. Our struggle today is a common struggle against the culture of money, market, and machine, which has become so powerful, which has become so overwhelmingly dominant. That's our struggle. It's our common struggle. It's a struggle against a system that has emerged, which is in so many ways so inhuman, which is in so many ways a denial of all the spiritual and moral values which determine and decide on the character of human civilization. This is what we're struggling against. This is what we must understand. We're struggling against a system which is full of iniquities and injustices. Our struggle is for the dignity and justice of all human beings. And we must understand that in this struggle, what we are trying to do is to restore what I regard as the human being's most vital identity, more important than all our particularistic identities. Our identities connected with our locality, our community, our religion, our nation. The most important identity must remain our human identity. That must remain our most important identity. And in this last decade of the 20th century, surely that must be our mission, to restore our human identity, rooted in a spiritual vision of the human being. Because there's the other alternative, which we don't want. There's the other vision of human identity, which we must repulse. That the human being is a mere assemblage of aimless atoms. That's not the human being. That the human being is a mere bundle of biological urges. That's not the human being. The human being is something else, more profound, more beautiful, more sacred, more reverent. That's the vision of the human being that we have to restore. That's our struggle. And one hopes, dear brothers and sisters, that in this struggle, Muslims, together with others, would realize that working together, standing shoulder to shoulder, is the only way. There is no other way. There is no choice. The world has become physically a common home to all of us. We cannot run away from this. It is yet to become a common home in the spiritual sense, in the moral sense, but it's already become a common home in the physical sense.